In the hidden corners of history, where power and fear intertwine, humanity once created tools that still make us shiver whenever we think of them. This is not fiction. It was a reality that existed, carved from iron and wood, forged in fire, and used to inscribe terror onto the bodies of fellow human beings. I will tell you about these things, not in the rhythm of a clock, not with timestamps, just as one long, unbroken story, so that you can touch every detail and feel the cold of the past. Let us begin with an object that appears almost dignified, its surface carved with the face of a gentle woman, as though it were made to comfort rather than to destroy. On the outside, it seems to invite compassion, but inside lies a design meant to prolong suffering. Once the door closes, the body within cannot move. Spikes, carefully placed with precision, pierce the flesh so that when the door shuts, blood seeps slowly, like countless needles pricking with every breath. The goal was not a quick death. The goal was stretched out consciousness, turning every second into a trial of willpower, forcing words from unwilling lips, stripping away faith that a person could endure before they collapsed. Now leave that enclosed space and look at something more dramatic, something that seizes the very mind of anyone who hears it. A wooden frame, turning wheels, ropes binding 4 limbs. When the wheel spins, the body is pulled tight, joint after joint resisting, snapping with dry, brittle sounds. That sound is not only the crack of bones. It is a symphony of destruction. Tendons straining, ligaments tearing, tissue splitting, and at times, the breath of the victim shifting from defiance to pleading. Those who approach the rack see not only a body twisted out of shape, but also the collapse of a once sturdy human being. It is a warning, a living testimony for anyone bold enough to oppose authority. But sometimes, cruelty does not need grand machines. The simplest tools can be the most unbearable. A small, unassuming device, light enough to fit in an executioner's pocket. 2 iron bars joined by a screw. Place the fingers between them. Turn the screw, and the crushing begins. Nails crack, flesh tears, bones grind. The pain of a single finger becomes the story of an entire life. Because in many societies, hands symbolized labor, survival, and dignity. When hands were destroyed, a person lost their place in the community. These wounds were not just personal injuries. They were social messages. I have been broken. And others would see it in the twisted hands that could no longer work or hold. Yet some creations were far more grotesque, hiding horror beneath a facade of majesty. Imagine a bronze statue, imposing and proud, shaped like a harmless animal. Inside, a person is locked tight. Beneath its belly, flames are lit. The metal grows red hot. The air inside becomes an oven, searing skin and choking lungs. The screams that rise within do not escape as they are. Instead, cruelly placed pipes transform those cries into something else, a sound resembling the bellowing of the animal itself, like twisted music forged from agony. Pain was masked as performance. Suffering turned into entertainment for those who watched. Ironically, the creator of this device was sometimes thrown into it as a gift, burned alive by the very idea that had given birth to the monster. The invention devoured its inventor, a cruel reflection of how power consumes even those who believe they control it. These tools feel as though cruelty itself had been programmed into society's machinery. They were not merely instruments of punishment. They were the language of authority. Whoever controlled them controlled the story. Whoever ordered them unlocked, rewrote someone's fate, and the people who watched, simply by witnessing, absorbed the lesson that order was maintained through pain. Obedience became automatic. No long explanations needed. Only the sight of scars on a body was enough to tell the story. Yet, on the other side of such darkness lies something astonishing. The extraordinary resilience of the human body. Records and testimonies reveal that even with shattered bones, torn flesh, and battered bodies, many remained conscious for unimaginable lengths of time. The human body has thresholds that science still struggles to explain, and that endurance, instead of sparking mercy, only inspired torturers to become more methodical. They learned to manipulate limits, adjust the pressure, stretch out time, mix methods so the victim remained awake, aware, and in agony. For only when the victim stayed conscious could confessions be extracted. We must also consider the context. These devices did not emerge in isolation. They were born within systems where law, religion, and personal ambition collided. When legal codes could not secure power, violence was crafted to fill the void. That systematic violence needed tools, and it needed a stage to persuade the masses. When we look more closely, these instruments of torture were not merely weapons of pain. They were symbols of control. People built massive machines not only to torment but also to perform. They became a stage where the suffering of an individual was transformed into a public lesson. Anyone who witnessed a body being twisted, burned, or crushed would forever carry the message in their mind. To defy power was to destroy oneself. And that was the true purpose, to plant fear that lasted longer than any wound. A body might heal, a broken bone might mend, but the memory of pain remained like a scar on the mind. The executioners knew this well. That is why torture was not only about extracting confessions, but about sowing the seed of obedience. There is something worth pondering. The creativity and ingenuity devoted to crafting these tools of torment were no less remarkable than the inventions born of noble pursuits. The only difference was that instead of bringing light, they led humanity deeper into darkness. A nail, a piece of wood, a sheet of iron, seemingly simple objects, once combined with a ruthless imagination, became machines of hell. This forces us to ask, is there always a shadow within human nature, waiting to twist raw material into instruments of suffering? And yet, we must also acknowledge another truth. The endurance of human beings stretches far beyond what we can imagine. Ancient records describe victims who survived hours of relentless torture. They lost the ability to walk. They lost their hands. But they still breathed, still lived, still bore witness to the world. This resilience was a double-edged sword. It gave executioners more space to experiment, to push cruelty to even more horrifying limits. Alongside the horror, however, quiet resistance endured. Some, even with bodies broken beyond recognition, refused to speak. Some communities found ways to hide, to protect each other from the tribunals of torture. These acts remind us that even when darkness dominates, light can still slip through the cracks. Today, when these devices survive only as relics in museums, we approach them with a mix of horror and curiosity. Visitors pass by, staring at an iron coffin lined with spikes or a tiny screw clamp, shivering as they imagine what it would feel like inside. But to those who lived in the past, these were not mere objects. They were reality, a vivid nightmare, a living part of society. Their story reminds us that history is not only made of glorious victories, but also of stains. And sometimes, it is the stains that teach us the deepest lessons. Humanity has built cathedrals, composed symphonies, written philosophies, but it has also engineered devices so intricate that suffering itself became a twisted form of art. Looking at the present, we must ask, do subtler forms of torture exist in new shapes? No longer spikes, ropes, or fire, but perhaps psychological pressure, constant surveillance, or the exploitation of labor to the point of spiritual collapse. The tools change with time, but the essence of power does not. That is why remembering the terrible machines of the past is not just about shuddering. It is about staying vigilant. In the end, the lesson from these dark pages of history is clear. Humanity must be defended constantly. If a society loosens its grip, if compassion is forgotten, then machines of suffering may return in new disguises. This lesson never grows old, and it is precisely by retelling these stories, without hiding them, without softening them, that we keep the necessary awareness alive, ensuring that darkness never again swallows the light.